Like a lot of firstborns, I was an adult pleaser growing up. It's part of the reason why I played youth hockey as long as I did. My dad was one of the founders of the youth hockey program in Somerville. He had me at skates at 3 years old, and I never got out of them. Just became part of the winter routine. But by the time I turned 14, I knew it was my last year playing, because the honest truth was I was just not very good. I was small, I was slow, I had no slap shot, I was always on the third line. I liked the games, but I didn't like the practices. So physically and psychologically, it just wasn't my game. I didn't have a future in it. I'd spent the previous year playing for Coach Murphy, who was very quick that entire year to give me that fabulous compliment he always gives to the worst player on the team, that coaches in general always give to the worst player on the team. Paul has more heart and desire and guts than anybody on this team. If we had a team full of Pauls, we'd win every game, which I knew was bull. He didn't want a team full of Pauls. He wanted a team full of Bobby Mescals. This was competitive youth sports. But as an adult pleaser, I took it. If that was my contribution to the team, if he thought that was my contribution to the team, I was more than happy to carry that flag. As sometimes happens in youth sports, this final year that I played turned out to be somewhat of a magical year. By the time January rolled around, we were undefeated in 2 different leagues, the only undefeated team in the state, other than the team that we were on a collision course with, Westford. The winner of that game being the favorite to go into the state tournament. This was a big deal in Somerville. They sent a reporter and a photographer to a youth hockey game. February 10th, 1979. I know this because I still have the clipping. Coach Murphy had us practiced. He put us through the ringer. He had us ready. And at the end of the first period, we were losing 5-1. And I knew what that meant. It meant I wasn't getting on the ice anytime soon. I'd lived it a million times. I was stuck on the bench unless the game got so out of hand that it didn't matter who was on the ice, or every other kid on the team dropped dead of exhaustion. But that didn't happen. And our goalie suddenly became a brick wall. And at the end of the second period, the score was 5-5. And now I was positive I wasn't getting out on the ice. But with the score tied, there was no way I was getting out on the ice. Beginning of the period, one of our guys got a penalty and went to the box. And Coach Murphy looked down at the penalty box and told him to come to the bench when it was over. A minute, 30 seconds went by. He came out of the box, came to the bench. Coach Murphy opened up the door and had forgotten to say who was going to go out in his place. And I stood there right by the door looking at Coach Murphy with his mouth open, with the door open. It was one of those instances that was a split second, but in my mind lasted a long time. Long enough for me to remember every time I'd ever sat on the bench in an important game. And I thought to myself, I have fresh legs, I can contribute, screw it. And I took off out the door. I don't know if he ever called me back. If he did, I didn't hear him because I was gone, chasing everything in sight that had a red hockey shirt on. And within 30 seconds, I found myself trailing Bobby Mescal as he was going in one-on-one on one of their defensemen. And my job is to make sure nobody's coming in from the side to interfere with him. And just as he got maybe 10 feet away from the goal, he lifted up his stick to leave the puck for whoever it was he'd sensed was behind him. I got it on my stick, and I looked up, and I could tell, as small as I was, there was no way, but 2 people between us, there was no way the goalie knew where the puck was and who had it. So I picked a corner, glove side high, and because I didn't have a slap shot, I reared back, and I let loose with the hardest wrist shot I could muster. And I watched in slow motion as the puck went past Bobby Mescal, past their defenseman, over the goalie's glove, and into the net, 6-5. And as Mike Eruzione would do exactly 1 year later, when he broke a tie in the third period, my arms and legs were everywhere. And Billy Pappas tackled me, and I was at the bottom of a huge pile of 14-year-olds. And I clawed my way out, and I went over to the boards where all the parents were standing and jumping up and down, and I started banging on the glass saying, "Who's going to win this game?" And I went back to the bench, and 9 minutes and 30 seconds of regulation time later, Somerville was still undefeated, and Westford went home in shame. And the locker room afterward was a madhouse. All these 14-year-olds slapping each other and hugging and laughing. And Coach Murphy went to every kid on the team with a slap on the back and an attaboy, and I knew you could do it. Every kid except me. He never said a word. And he didn't say a word really to me for the rest of the season. The adult pleaser had displeased the adult. I'll be honest with you, it messed with my head. It took me a while to realize that that reaction said more about him than it did about me. But the more important realization I had is that sometimes our biggest challenges are our perceptions that we have of our own limitations. Because the truth of it is, everybody has it within them to be the hero of the game. Everybody has it within them to be the star of the show. All it takes is to be ready and to have enough gumption to say, screw it.